expected it to fall.
It just wants you to know it's doing things.
Yeah. Right.
But I was there.
Close. So, his
There's a
dad
lot of
started the
folks
business through
waiting for
commercial
your
construction. See, that's why you, that's
Well,
why.
I know, York. You know Scott?
Oh, the name is really familiar, but I don't know him.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so do you want to call him?
Well, I don't know, I could, but who do you have?
So anybody from CSB, because I
Okay,
think they're-
anybody.
anybody, even from human resources or, you know, whatever.
Okay.
And because they have 3 branches, one in Colville, one in Somerville, and one in Snook, so that
Okay.
covers all of
Burleson
Burleson County. I serve with Justin Lewis, who is the Snook
Please, come on in.
manager owner.
And I got my
EDC.
schedule worked out. I'm gonna be there.
So I serve with Jason Rhodes on EDC as well. You know,
Okay.
sometimes the same people is the
And
same.
Neil's presenting and I want to
And
hear what he had to
then,
say.
Thank you.
somebody from the Bud Cross Border cul-de-sac is
And as is
Caldwell.
Raina.
So Brad Bowers, I talked to.
You're never sold a rice, not
the
for you.
service manager.
Okay, no problem.
No,
Raina will
well, I
agree.
think.
Let all the elected officials.
So we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here. I'll let you guys kind of finish up grabbing some food. But thank you all for attending our Regional Economic Development Roundtable meetings. We have a great group on Zoom and a good group here, so thank you. Please enjoy the fajitas. Sorry about the Zoom group who don't get to enjoy any fajitas. Maybe next time. But we are very happy today for this afternoon. What we'd like to talk to you first, I'll give Caitlin a second, in a little bit she'll come up here and share. Our group has been working really hard on doing some data analyst programs and being able to figure out how we can best display that information for you as our regional economic development representatives. So, how you'll be able to easily access that information. To talk a little bit about that. And then we have some guest speakers today. We have Dr. Robert Fire, and Dr. Bill Fire. They'll be here to speak a little bit about capital budgeting, planning, and of course the ARPA strategies and topics. So I know doing some outreach with a lot of you guys, coming in, all this COVID money coming in, and so they're here to help provide some support and insight on the importance of doing some preparing, planning, having this capital project lined up, ready to go, understanding what the community needs are, and then understanding, what ARPA funds are, kind of what's going on with those strategies, topics associated with ARPA. So we are very excited to have them here. Thank you guys. Go ahead and get started. Feel free to jump in and ask any questions in the chat, but also make sure you all chat your name and who you're with, so we have you guys recording on this item. Have everybody come on ahead and let people get started and kind of showcase what our little programs are.
Try not to take too long on this, but we redesigned our economic development page, and we want to show y'all everything we have on the new page. So to find this, share the screen. Sure, everybody on Zoom can see this. We'll stop real quick. Okay, sorry about that. So to get to our new website, or new website, new redesign on our section of the website, you're going to go to programs at the very top and find economic and community development. And we have some information about us, some announcements, some general information about what we do. And you're going to scroll down, and we have all the sections of all our data, all our information that you can possibly find. We have some data resources, information on funding opportunities, some small business resources, regional planning. Previous regional roundtables will be located here. We have information on us, the calendar, and any kind of news updates we'd like to send out. Every month we actually send out a monthly newsletter. So any information that's coming up the next month, for instance, August coming up, we send it out at the end of July so y'all know what we have to offer to any news, anything like that. So funding opportunities, any kind of webinar trainings, so on and so forth. So if y'all are not signed up already, I highly recommend y'all sign up. It's one newsletter a month. We do plan on, once we grind out the ARPA funding notebook, we will send out a release newsletter for y'all for that. Upcoming events, we also have a section for that is connected to our calendar. So these are going to be for the month of July, any kind of webinar events, any kind of training, any kind of community events as well. The blue will be the webinar events, the red will be our community events. So we have, every month, we'll publish the community events that are going on. So we have a lot of 4th of July events during that weekend. We have some farmers markets, First Fridays in downtown Bryan, so on and so forth. So we have a lot of information we want to give out to y'all. We want to broadcast those community events. So if there's anything that I have not caught, please let me know. We can add it to the website and advertise it. So the main thing that we added was the data resources. We did a mass overhaul on that. And the biggest thing that we did was the regional dashboard for y'all. It's super interactive and lots of information on here. This was done with our collaboration with the Impact and MZ. And it's going to be by the region. Some of the data is divided by county, but most of it will be by region. So we have here where it you can hover over the line and you can see the population for the start of that year. We have population forecast by county.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Thank you. And we actually organize some of these columns by police. You can hover over these. But the really cool stuff I find is down here, where you can really start digging into, greatest to least by here, because there's so much information. So for instance, this is a workforce categorization, and you can see, maybe you want to see which one has the least % of change in jobs. That would be production. Change it, you see the most change percentage, which is management. You see it also by median hourly earnings as well. Yes. It's really cool information, huh? Same thing with the job postings, hover over it, and you can go through and see the decrease in the last 30 days. There's lots of stuff in this one. I highly recommend don't just go in there and just dig through it. Just so much stuff that I don't want to take the whole hour to talk about, So just lots of information. I have the top 10 hiring organizations in the region, which Texas A&M kind of known. So let me go back and talk about the county dashboards. This is also the same thing that I will be talking about, but this is going to be as a region as a whole. So let's go to Leon County. So I have it divided into two, the demographics and the economics. So demographics will be the population at risk and the educational attainment. So we'll go into the educational attainment. Oops, sorry, not this one. I forgot this one's a PDF. Let me go back. We'll go to at risk. And this will actually highlight some target areas that we want to focus on in the region. For instance, households below the poverty level, households percentage and the number. We have the households with disabilities, population that are seniors, households without vehicles. If they can't get around, that's less job opportunities for them. We are still working on the homelessness section right here. As soon as we can find our data source and why that's giving me an issue, we'll have it updated. That is a target goal of mine to get done. We also have food stamps right here, those who don't have food stamps and those with. And then we also have what language do the population speak? So we have some smaller percentages of people. We can sort them by highest, greatest to least. Some of these are also interactive that we can get a ratio and further information regarding each topic. Now, these two will be displayed similar to this one. However, the rest of them, such as the educational attainment and all the economy ones, will be in a PDF. So you can take these, use this to supplement your grant information that you're trying to apply for. This is what we really want y'all to use this for. This is all the information I think y'all could possibly ever use to apply for grants, and we want y'all to use them. If there's information that's not on here, please let us know. We want to provide that to y'all, have it easily accessible to y'all as well. This is through MZ, and we have partnered with them to be able to dive down into a lot of the economic data for y'all. For instance, this is our overall view on the industry in the region. So we have, these aren't interactive, of course, these are PDFs, you can print them out, give them to other partners, either other agencies in your region, so you can try to tackle any kind of issues and concerns y'all have. So again, a lot of information we have. We can get more information than this. We just need to know what y'all need. So. And then the unemployment section. And this will actually show you where the unemployment is at. So for instance, construction, we have the region, which will be Leon County, is at 28.5%, which is really high in comparison to the nation. So you can see on average where you have an extreme abnormally in comparison. So, but try not to overwhelm y'all because I know this is a lot, but there's a lot of information. Dig through it. If y'all have any questions, I have my business card near the sign-in sheet. Just grab one and contact me saying, hey, I want to see X, Y, Z. I can find it for you, or hopefully find it for you. Hopefully it's out there. So that should be it. Did y'all have any questions?
Is this gonna get updated after census comes in, or is this separate apart from census?
Yes. So the regional dashboard is automatically updating. They update it for us. When they get new information, it's already done. And they'll do it for us, which is a little off the best because then we have to focus on all these that we manually go in and update for y'all. So when we find new information, when there's an update, we run through all the data, we post it. So as soon as we get that information, it will be updated.
Thank you.
That's it. All right, I'll turn it over. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Caitlin, for sharing all the hard work that you've been doing and all the data analysis and kind of digging into things. But she's worked really hard on that. So we're really hoping that you guys will be able to benefit from this information we've been able to pull for you. So if you'd now like to get ready, Dr. Robert Greer is here to speak to all of us, and so we're very excited to have him. Thank you. Dr. Greer.
Right. Hi.
Howdy.
So I don't know most of you here, so I'll take just a few minutes. My name is Rob Greer. I'm an associate professor over at Bush School at A&M. If you're not familiar with us, we have a couple different master's programs, but I teach primarily in the public service and administration program. I teach mostly courses on public budgeting and management. And I am the director of our certificate of public management and serve a couple different roles there. So if you ever need something from the Bush School or we can be helpful, feel free to reach out and happy to put you in contact with the right person if I'm not it. I'm joined today by Patrick Wilshire and Michael Legault from public management. So I'll let Patrick introduce himself here.
Good afternoon. My name is Patrick Wiltshire. I am president of Public Management Incorporated. We have worked with cities and counties around this state for the past almost 40 years. Just a little bit about me is I have a Master's of Public Administration. From the A&M system. I've been working in local government for the better part of 15 years. And so we're excited to be here today to kind of talk through some of these strategies and planning efforts. And so hopefully what we're able to collaborate with is very useful to everybody.
Cool. We like this partnership because I'm a typical academic, so I'm going to start big picture, and then when it gets to boots on the ground, Patrick's going to help me out and with what's going on. Okay, so what are we talking about today? We're talking about infrastructure. Everybody's talking about infrastructure, right? You can't turn on the news without hearing about infrastructure. I just saw an update this morning about the new infrastructure bill coming through. No actual updates, just that they're still talking about it, right? What is infrastructure is a whole nother conversation, perhaps a philosophical one that I'm happy to have with you as well. But in general, right, we're talking about our roads and bridges and dams, our water, our schools, broadband, IT. If you look at the new infrastructure bill, we're also talking about R&D, we're talking about affordable housing, we're talking about human capital, we're talking about all sorts of stuff. And so this past spring, I was lucky to teach a class at the Bush School, a special topics class on economic development. We spent a lot of time connecting these ideas of infrastructure, capital budgeting, and economic development, which I think is why I ended up here talking to you guys. And so the topic that was proposed for me was capital budgeting strategies, thinking primarily about planning and implementation. So I spent a lot of time talking about public budgeting. It's super exciting. All my students love it. They can't get enough of my talk about public budgeting. So that's where that's my wheelhouse. I'm going to kind of stay in that lane. And then we are going to talk about sort of ongoing legislation and funding opportunities. Patrick is going to help me out there. All right. So like I said, I'm an academic. We're going to start in an academic style, right? So why do we care about infrastructure? How does it link to economic development and productivity? And why are we getting so much attention on it at the moment, right? So at the national level, right, we care because it subsidizes private production costs, right? Everybody's pretty excited about that, right? And it leads to better, lower public services, lower cost public services, lower cost transportation, utility, communication, right? And if you're lucky enough, you also attract foreign investment, right? And that we care about that for all sorts of metrics. At the subnational level, for you guys in particular, right, we're talking about adding valuable amenities to our community. Right? We're increasing our housing values, we're expanding our tax base, we're boosting our local economy, growing our opportunities, attracting businesses and people. All right. So the goal here is that our local governments, you guys and your colleagues, hopefully are setting our capital priorities strategically, right, and implementing reforms that make the process more strategic. Right, but we have to keep in mind, like the sort of framework that we always have to go into this with, is that we have to adapt to political circumstances, right? You will not know that better than I. But unfortunately, a lot of our capital budgeting is decided in a non-strategic way, right? We lack formal plans or long-term goals, and when that happens, we tend to underinvest in capital infrastructure, or we invest in things that are suboptimal, right? And that restricts our long-term growth. Right, and this happens particularly during recessions, right? So last year, I'm sure I could go down the list, and all of you can tell me about deferred maintenance and capital things that got cut last year, right? And it happens in 2008, right? It happens every time we have a recession, right? Capital costs, maintenance costs, everything gets deferred or cut, and then unfortunately, it's a little slow to come back, right? So once it's cut, it's hard to put back on the agenda. It's a politically easy thing to axe, but unfortunately, that lowers the useful life of our assets. It increases our future costs, right? We have to replace things sooner, things break down more, it replaces more to fix them, or it costs more to fix them or replace them, right? So when we're thinking about reforms to our capital budgeting process, we get to reform not only, or improve not only our financial condition, right? Overall financial condition of the city improves, but we also get to accelerate growth. Right, so it's a double win. You guys win on the economic growth front, and I'm really, my goal for most of the time when I'm teaching my MBA classes is to improve financial condition. I just want them to be better public stewards of the dollar, right? So everybody wins. Okay, so if we go through the capital budgeting literature, right, the theme that emerges over and over is systematic processes, right? Systematic processes that are done on a regular basis, that are updated frequently. There are far too many stories. Again, I'm sure I could go down the list here and you can give me examples of strategic plans or capital plans that were done and hung on the wall or put in a drawer, never to be seen from again, right? And that's what we're trying to sort of work against, right? So we recommend these systematic processes to ensure that our repairs and improvements are done in a timely manner. Again, I'm going to come back to deferred maintenance as a particularly issue that's a problem that can be fixed for a lot of places. Prioritizing projects is something that we're going to be talking about today. We need to provide time in the budget to find the best financing methods. So we're going to talk about funding sources today. And public input and citizen engagement is a topic that we need to include in this systematic process that we'll also talk about. Again, we're always trying to avoid sort of really sharp increases in rates or fees, and public information and disclosure is another issue. Okay, so what are the critiques? What do people sort of have a problem with, or what goes wrong when we're talking about capital budgeting, right? So proximal investment is just sort of our fancy way of saying that we prioritize new visible projects at the expense of maintenance and ongoing capital projects, right? It's always more expensive to build something new than to keep something going, but it's really tempting to cut a big ribbon in front of a new building, right? So, or be able to stand on that as an accomplishment to build something new. So how do we get around that? One, again, coming back to the systematic planning, is having an explicit planning process, right? To ensure that ensures maintenance and makes it more difficult to defer or ignore. Having dedicated funding sources, which can be a little more challenging. And explicitly recognizing the financial implications of deferred maintenance, right? So with things like SB 34, with our public disclosure, understanding the current state of our assets, their useful life, and what happens when we don't take care of them like we should, right? Having that in writing, having that in our financial disclosures prevents being able to put it off, because then we have numbers in front of us, right? Another critique, as I mentioned in the last slide, underinvestment. Right, so we tend to underinvest in critical infrastructures, water, sewer, healthcare, even though these are fundamental to achieving economic growth, right? When we go out there and when we talk to businesses that we're either trying to recruit or retain or whatever the case may be, critical infrastructure is a fundamental asset that they need to be able to do their jobs, run their businesses successfully. But oftentimes it doesn't get talked about when we're talking about economic development. Right? We don't talk about pipes and pumps and water towers and things like that as economic development projects, but they can be, or they should be. And this goes for, it's a little bit easier when we're talking about roads, right? Everybody knows you need to be able to get roads or rail or airports or anything to get in and out. But all of these critical infrastructures, including broadband, which I know is a hot issue that we'll talk about here in a second, are all necessary, and we recognize that we underinvest in those a lot of times. Right? We also have to recognize that capital spending is typically pro-cyclical, right? We tend to spend in good years and not in bad years, and this minimizes a lot of the effect that those capital projects can have, right? And then the planning disconnect. The critique is that the planning for our capital assets is done over here, right? And our typical operating budget is done over here, and neither may actually be connected to an overall strategic plan. And so connecting those dots is a way to make the process that much more impactful, right? But it takes time, it takes people, right? And nobody has enough time or people in their organizations to do everything they want to do. All right, so this is one of many sort of normative models of capital budgeting management, but I like to use it as a framework to sort of walk through what we are hopefully doing or what we're hopefully thinking about, key ideas when we're talking about long-term capital management and budgeting, right? Hopefully we already have some sort of strategic plan. If not, that's a good place to start, right? And because the strategic plan is going to tie directly into our capital improvement plan, right, if they're done correctly. All right, we need to make sure we have our needs assessment, and we need to have our long-term fiscal planning that all ties together. Again, rather than having silos, right, we're hopefully being able to connect across these different plans. All right, when we talk about financial management, we need to recognize not only our funding opportunities, but our financing opportunities. How are we going to get capital up front, right? And that's going to be a separate but different decision on how we're going to fund these things long term. Right? When we talk about opportunities for funding either from the state or for the new federal legislation, that may be well and good, but if we're talking about a 20, 30-year program, right, we need to understand long-term fiscal planning and debt management. And we'll also talk about the prioritization here in the next couple of slides. And then we get to where the rubber meets the road, right, where we have our project management, our procurement, all of those fun details of financial management, where I don't know if, how many financial managers in the room, right? That's the next step. And then the fourth, infrastructure maintenance, and where we talk about our maintenance planning, our asset management, our funding strategies long-term, right? And again, this is where we start to fall off, especially during and coming out of recession. All right, so if we don't have one, when we're developing our capital plans, we're trying to answer the following questions, right? What assets do we currently own? What are our investment needs? How do we prioritize those, or have we prioritized them? How much are they going to cost to build and maintain? What our fiscal capacity is, and there's different strategies for thinking about how to calculate fiscal capacity. Best way to finance capital investments, effective project management, and then operation costs once they're connected, right? And so this depends somewhat on whether we're doing our capital budgeting separate or whether we're doing it in a unified way, but recognizing those linkages is going to be an important step. Again, establishing priorities for how you're going to select projects is always going to be up to local leadership. So it's hard to sort of pinpoint what is best for any one community. But some of the things that we're considering when we're ranking our projects, fiscal impact, of course, health and safety effects, which is going to be directly tied to some of your funding opportunities, and is also going to be tied to some of these other things, right? So the environmental effects of any given project are going to be directly related to health and safety in a lot of cases. And that's going to be helpful when you're thinking about justification for projects as you go after different revenue sources. All right. The economic effects, of course, is on the front of y'all's minds. Disruption and inconvenience, what's going to cost in terms of time and missed opportunities for doing this project, right? And then further down, I'm getting lost in my list, the distributional effects, right? Who this benefits and how, right? So one of the things that came out last year was how cities spend their money and who benefits from that spending. Right? And so I encourage everybody, if it's not already part of your systematic planning, is to think about these distributional effects. Thinking about what areas of your city, what racial or ethnic groups are benefiting or potentially being hurt by certain projects. Right? Implications of deferral, right? You know that you're going to have to do these projects now, right? Or at some point in the future. How much does it cost if I put it off a year? How much does it cost if I put off 5 years? Now, both in terms of monetary effects, but also effect on our citizens and service obligations. Right? Can we meet the needs of our community if we put this off another couple of years? Maybe, maybe not, right? But how much is it going to cost to do it at a later date? Right? Risk management could be a whole separate topic. We can talk about another lunch, but amount of uncertainty, all your projects are going to come with some level of uncertainty, right? No project, no infrastructure project is going to come with zero uncertainty, but there's different risk levels, right? And when we're thinking about these different funding and financing opportunities, the risk to not only will my community use this, will they pay the amount I think they're going to pay for it? Do I get the supplemental funding from the state or the federal government that I think I'm going to get? How much do I have to put up front, right? All of these are going to be different uncertainty factors that go into your risk management strategy. The effects on the surrounding communities, as you know, everyone in the COG, right? As you do things, right, you affect your neighbors, right? Looking for opportunities to collaborate, to work together is going to only benefit everybody in the COG, right? And then the impact of one capital project on future capital projects, right? We have to recognize, right, I've got a list, right? What happens if I do one first? Maybe 3, maybe 5, maybe 10 are affected down the road, right? And those have to be recognized costs, right? I have to be thinking, okay, if I reprioritize these, what happens to things downstream, right? Not only for me, right, but for not only for my capital budget, but also for our operating budget as well. All right. So some of the things that we identify as common mistakes. Inadequate communication with residents. Citizen engagement on capital projects can be difficult, right? Getting people to engage is difficult. I'm gonna talk about some examples here in a minute. Failure to consider level of service needed. I love all the data, right, on the website. This is fantastic. This is a great resource, and hopefully we can look out 5, 10, I don't know how, I didn't look how far it goes out, right? But we can see our population projections. We can see the trends in our employment and who's likely to be part of our community over the next couple of years and what we need to be thinking long-term, right? These projects don't just happen overnight. Right, we have to go through many stages of approvals. We have to think about construction times, right? So we have to be able to think long term, right? So considering level of service needed now, but in the future as well, is what we're trying to achieve. Right? Incorrectly identifying and assessing risks of existing assets, again, overestimating how long we're going to be able to maintain this asset, especially with deferred maintenance and cut funding and things like that. Failure to develop long-term financial plans that match our strategic and capital plans, right? And not incorporating improvement to these plans over time. These have to be ongoing things. All right, so when we're thinking about citizen engagement, some of our best practices. So I like to start with model stability because these can be difficult conversations to have with our community. And you get a lot of people with very strong opinions when it comes to capital projects, right? And so we like to start with modeling stability. Providing and promoting resources for effective communication, then opportunities for informed engagement can come in a couple different forms, right? But over the last year, we've seen making use of technology is a particularly sort of useful form at this point. Right? We've got some different tools. This doesn't always have to be sit in a room and have people sort of arguing with each other, but it can be, right? There's lots of different ways to have discourse. Right? But and the last one is sometimes we don't do as much as we could to develop plans to reach these underrepresented groups, right? And here different communities will have different types of underrepresented groups, but they should have a say in these capital prioritization processes. So participatory budgeting, this is one strategy that has been used specifically for capital budgeting to promote more of a democratic process, to get more citizen engagement. And so we have a chunk of our capital budget that is decided directly by a citizen committee, right? And so we see this done on a not a huge scale, but neighborhood scale perhaps, about certain projects, about how you get to ask people directly how they want to spend the money for, most often I think parks and things like that. Another tool that some cities that I've been working with have been using is this Balancing Act tool. College Station is currently rolling out a version of this, and we'll put some links here at the end that we can send out so you guys can look. But this is just an example of a screenshot of what the Balancing Act tool looks like, and so you can customize this for your city. It has different revenue categories, different spending categories, and citizens can go in and each of these drop down and make recommendations on what they would like to see, right? How would we like to spend money? And so this is for an operating budget, but you can do this for the capital budget as well, and you aggregate that over time. Now, getting people to go here and spend time on this is another challenge, but it does present an opportunity to get some real feedback that you can sort of aggregate up and use in your decision-making processes. All right, so I'm going to hand it over here so we have a couple minutes to for Patrick and then think and then talk as a whole group. But the sort of overall consideration that I want to come away with this is thinking of our infrastructure as a network and the entire system as a process of economic development, right? So critical infrastructure at large has a lot of different roles in our region and in each of our cities, right? And they're all connected to economic development. Right? So thinking holistically about our infrastructure, about our capital projects, and how that can be used to improve our community is economic development and can be thought holistically as economic development. So some of the current issues that a lot of cities are dealing with now, broadband, cybersecurity, and IT upgrades, right? These are part of the portfolio of capital projects that are economic development, right? So you could have the best water system in the world, the best utility system in the world, but if it's being held at ransom, right, it does nobody good. And so thinking of cybersecurity as part of critical infrastructure, knowing if people, if citizens and businesses know that your community is safe and reliable, right? That is economic development, in my opinion, right? Thinking holistically. Okay, and then different funding sources have different costs and benefits. So when we're talking about federal funding sources, we're talking about municipal bonds, we're talking about public-private partnerships, right? These all have different trade-offs, right? And we can't treat them all the same, right? And then my final piece is we can't forget about disclosure, right? A lot of times we get wrapped up in sort of the glamour of doing something big, right? Building something big, and the nuts and bolts of getting all the approvals, doing all the disclosure for the long term is going to be really important, whether we're talking about federal funding, whether we're talking about municipal bonds, right? We have to think about the disclosure part. So I have to sneak that in somewhere, and this slide seemed like the best place. Okay, I'm gonna turn it over to Patrick now, and he's gonna walk you through some legislation stuff.
Okay, I guess just real briefly to kind of give you guys a little bit of an idea of me, related to this and to today. I cut my teeth, like I tell folks that I cut my teeth on economic development with the city of Corpus Christi. For the first couple of years that I was there, and right up until I left, I was there at the beginning of the recession in 2008. And sort of the strategies that we tried to invoke at that time with the city in terms of job retention and citizen engagement and infrastructure development was really quite challenging. For the last 12 years, I've been fortunate enough to work with cities and counties all over the state to sort of tackle these same types of issues. And so, the planning component, we really felt good about the partnership today with Dr. Greer to kind of tie these two things. I've been part of various planning documents, both with the city of Corpus Christi and with our clients, and I can tell you that there's a lot that are on the shelf someplace. And that's just how it goes, right? Part of today would be, well, whenever we're planning, are we identifying the opportunities that are available to us? Because that may be locally funded, but that also may be, federal legislation. And so some of these things that, we have are, and you guys have been probably bombarded with American Rescue Plan Act, right? And so, and I can probably talk to you for the rest of the day about that. I'm not going to, but I could. And, we felt really good about what that was going to be for cities and counties and states, for that matter, around this nation. But the question is how are you going to use those dollars? Do you have something set up so that you can identify those needs? Some of the legislation is really telling us that we should direct these funds to areas within your communities that were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, and that's rightfully so. And so, some of the talking points that we have with our clients are, okay, well, you have an allocation. All of you in this room have seen what the allocation may be for you and or for the county and for your neighboring jurisdictions in the state, as well as other federal agencies. We even have listed up here that the EDA is going to be releasing a $3 billion NOFO at some point in time, and that's going to be an opportunity for economic development, throughout the state. And so part of our talking points are, have you identified your needs? Are they in a plan? Some plans that you can build off of, because that's very important, we believe, in terms of being really good stewards of federal dollars and of how we spend these funds for our constituents. We really think that's very important. And so we've got this American Rescue Plan dropping billions of dollars into this state. One in which we are still yet to see what exactly that's going to be, and that's going to be the state's version of the American Rescue Plan. Now, I'm in favor of being part of that conversation, and I'm sure y'all are too, because there is some critical investments that can be made from a regional perspective. And I think that's a great opportunity for this COG and for other COGs to really partner on, what does that mean? How can we do that? And so we're excited about the American Rescue Plan. It's it's very anomalous in how it's kind of coming out. Little guidance, there is guidance, it's not very detailed. You're kind of left to define things on your own. And so that's where, we really encourage, at least the communities that we're working with and those that we get to speak to let's build out that list. We feel confident that there's ways to justify a lot of these needs. Everybody's needs are different, so we don't want to pigeonhole anybody, and that's for certain. So are we able to plan for some of that? Some of that may be in your current capital plans, your water improvement plans, your sewer improvement plans, your economic development plans, your needs that you have. Caitlin, went through all this data that you guys have available to you. That's huge. I'm sitting here taking this like, can I recreate that for my clients? This is good information that you have at your disposal. The next thing that you guys are hearing about, and one which Dr. Greer spoke on briefly when he stepped up, was that there's this information coming out about what is this infrastructure bill going to look like. You've got a bipartisan version that's just under $1 trillion. You got the Democratic group that are proposing several $1 trillion. Ultimately, it's going to turn into something. I think we can all agree on that. The dollar amount is really the question. How much is that going to be? There's no scenario that exists, at least for us, whenever we're dealing with our clients and our conversations with some of our partnering agencies, that money doesn't make its way into this state in a meaningful way. And I think that's very important to be able to look at as you go through your budgeting process, as you go through your planning process. Are there really great regional projects that need to be discussed now? Whether that is transportation related, bridge related, whatever that may be, we know money's going to go into the water and into the wastewater category from this. There's a lot of conversation about eliminating the lead pipes. So there's a lot of that. We know that through that legislation, there's going to be a lot of money that goes into the Building Resilient Infrastructure for Communities, which is the BRIC program. I mean, billions of dollars will be thrust into some of these programs, which can be very, very important, all of which may require some type of planning document for us to say, okay, well, if we're going to go after those funds, have we talked about this yet? Is there an opportunity to talk about that, both regionally and locally? And so you've got this, American Jobs Fund, whatever this name is going to be. Eventually, it's going to be here, and we're all going to be dealing with those billions of dollars, maybe those trillions of dollars on top of what you already have. Recently, we have this Invest in America Act, which was, a reauthorization bill, but it also added billions of dollars to it. This is another great, when we're, speaking at COGS, we kind of look at this as a very regional type of opportunity. And that, again, that's kind of where we look at, well, what kind of data exists for us to really capitalize on these opportunities. So you've got the Invest in America, that was just a reauthorization, billions of dollars. You've got an infrastructure bill that's going to get passed at some point in time for $1 trillion or more. And then you've got money that is coming into either, for some of you, you have the money in your account because you've already requested it, and others, you've got money coming in the next, 45 days timeframe. Great opportunities, to do huge and impactful, solutions that, hopefully have been discussed and are causing the discussion right now. At least that's what we're, engaging with our, with our clients about. Some of you probably participate with the Texas Department of Agriculture's Community Development Block Grant Program. And that's a really great, program to, as one of those things that had been a, tried and true program that you can list in your planning documents in terms of ways to finance, some of these improvements. These programs listed up here are either biannual or they're annual programs. They're great opportunities. They have been tried and true, for the last, 34 years, these programs have been implemented year after year to, provide needed investments. There are specific requirements, criteria to justify your programs here, but that doesn't go without the opportunity to list them in some of your planning documents so that you can identify your needs and find ways to fund them, because that generally is one of the hardest things to do. Certainly preachers require that. Through some of these recent legislations, we've seen the bringing back of earmarks. And so this was all of our representatives' ability to identify projects to a certain amount of funds in terms of, what do we want in this state of Texas. And so I would encourage you to have those conversations with representatives. You may have already done that. And hopefully some of those projects may have made these lists that have recently went out. But here are earmarks. Is this more money and more opportunity for this region, this state, certainly those in this room, to find a way to take advantage of, so that you can address needs within your community. CDBG mitigation, I know that this is maybe a hot topic for some in this room, and it's certainly been a big deal, around the state with recent competition. And so there are processes that have been put in the works that will allocate funds, or additional funds, into this region. There was a round one competition, and many of you may know that the outcome of that wasn't favorable to some of our larger cities and counties to the south, and so they made a big stink about that. And as a result, funds are being reallocated in a different way. What ends up happening though, and what we'll see in writing soon enough, is that if you guys recall, part of this CDBG mitigation competition had a regional method of distribution. And in that regional method of distribution, they allocated $500 million for the Harvey impacted region. The initial allocation of that $500 million had about 10.7 million coming to Brazos Valley Council of Governments. Whenever the GLO initiates their amendment to their action plan to reallocate hundreds of millions of dollars to Harris and Houston, they will also be amending that action plan to take whatever money they have left and dump it into the regional method of distribution. And so what that's going to look like, it's going to go from 500 million to $1 billion. And based on the allocations, that this COG is going to go from receiving 10.7 to approximately $22 million. And that's a big deal, because that's a big deal for this area's ability to recover from these disasters. We want you guys to spend the money how you need it, and as you know, if you participate in some of these competitions, it was a planning document. You had to show, what is this related to? So it all, more and more we're seeing the need to identify a project and a plan. And while the CDBG mitigation competition was sort of one of these almost once in a lifetime allocations for some of these things, it doesn't go without the opportunity to do something very impactful. And this is yet again another opportunity that we'll see sort of unfold over the next 6 to 9 months. We know that this allocation is coming to this region. It's a matter of time before the GLO releases that to the region, so that you develop methodology, method of distribution, and you finalize that. You give these communities a chance to, recover or continue their recovery. This last one is kind of one of the things I touched on, and there's, Texas is going to go to a special session, and they're going to talk about how they're going to spend their $15 billion, and that is a lot of money. There's a lot of zeros on that. The same uses as everybody else in this room in terms of the American Rescue Plan funding, and that's going to be, addressing, negative impacts, public health, public safety, water and sewer infrastructure, this is broadband, whatever it may be. They have those same uses. It is our hope that we can have some dialogue in terms of, well, is there a chance for some regional distribution of that, similar to a method of distribution that's coming through CDBG mitigation? Is that a conversation that we could have at this level? You guys know what the needs are. Certainly there's some data that exists for your jurisdictions. You have your neighboring communities. You can tell what some of their plans are and what may be coming in or leaving their communities. And so if we have a shot for recovery, there is a lot of money, coming into this state, literally finalized over the next 12 months, billions of dollars to when it's added up, it could be trillions of dollars to the state. And so, our objective is to try to at least help tie and bridge that gap between how we're planning for these things, because they are coming, and how we implement them whenever they do get here. Because there's a responsibility for us to be, accountable, transparent with the funds, and really be creative at this point in time. Because it's an opportunity that, I've never seen anything quite like it, never read anything quite like it. And in the years that follow this, we may never see anything quite like it again, hopefully, because we have to pay all this stuff back, right? And so it's an opportunity. We hope that there's a chance for real regional discussions about, addressing these needs. And so we've hopeful that we can answer questions and, kind of go from there. I don't know if Dr. Greer wants to add anything to that.
No. So, yeah, go ahead.
No, if you have something.
Just let me talk, I'm just gonna keep talking.
Yeah. Well, anyways, there's, I think, the gist of just kind of acting on everything at this point in time is, is really the message that we wanted to be able to get across in terms of strategizing.
That's good.
I guess I'll open the floor to questions, if there's, yes, sir.
When do you think they'll get their final revised guidelines
Yeah.
on the ARPA? Because without us having defined guidelines of what we can and we can't do, it's almost useless to put some of those plans together, because if we can't use that money, we know we don't have local money available.
Right.
So do you have a crystal ball?
Yeah, I don't, but I can tell you, sort of our thought process on this, if that does help. The church has been pretty clear, they're not going to issue approvals for anything. They have very vague guidance. We've asked some pretty pointed questions to them, and we haven't been responded to on some of these questions. And in some ways, there's some purpose to that. I don't think they want to be held liable for some of those things. Now, that may or may not be true. I don't know if they know how to answer the question, because this is new to them. The Treasury has never been responsible to manage a grant program, even though not everybody's calling it a grant program. We liken this much to a CDBG program than anything else that's out there, to be quite honest with you. Particularly when you read those terms and conditions, they contradict some of their FAQs. The fact that there is a lot of references to civil rights and fair housing. And so, some of the things just, that we're telling our clients is because, there is a timeline on this. It's a rather lengthy timeline, on it. You do have time. You don't have to act when you get the funding. Okay, so that's rule number one. You don't have to spend it right away. Judge is probably in your account already, and so if it's and so you right now, if I was advising this room, it would be let's identify those needs first, right? And that's kind of what we're telling our clients. The other thing that we're doing, at least for our group, is we're creating what we call a recovery plan. And that's not a requirement unless it's above a certain population. But what it does, and I think this is the most critical thing that anybody can do at this point in time, whether it's for ARP or anything else, is how are you justifying your projects? You've got money, you've got needs. What are they tied to? Can you, what we say around the office is, can you write a memo with a straight face about how you use the dollars, right? Can you do that? If you feel like you can do that, and you've got some data to back that up, they're not gonna approve it. They've been pretty clear about that. They've given you the money to spend it on recovery needs. We also don't want to delay that too much. And so our recommendation is let's justify this. Let's be creative about it. Let's be transparent about it. And let's be accountable to that. And so that's, if that helps you at all, I'm not certain it does, because you may be doing some of those things, Judge, already. But we can't wait for them to issue clearer guidance than what they've done. And I don't suppose, and I wouldn't expect them to say anything that is going to be so clear for us at this point in time to feel really great about it. Sir?
I'm just, during the discussion, I'm thinking, it's gonna be waiting until the first shoe drops. It's not that they're gonna grant approvals, it's what are the first ones they deny, that they flat out say no to.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be more telling than them saying, you're approved, you're not you, but yeah, you can do yours, and you can do, no, not that one.
Yeah.
It's the no's, I think, what I'm waiting for.
And unfortunately, the no's are gonna come in the form of, here's a letter that says you have to repay X amount of dollars.
Yeah,
Exactly.
for sure.
That is probably the hardest thing for anybody to deal with right now.
Yes.
And one in which, why we're advising the way that we are. Little things like, well, it's not that little, environmental, and I can go on a whole tangent about environmental, but they say environmental doesn't apply, or some versions of the environmental don't apply. Well, does it? Because your terms and conditions that you guys are gonna sign to get those dollars, so that you're gonna follow all applicable environmental laws and regulations. This is very contradictory, right? So I think whenever you're identifying your projects and your needs, you fully think out, am I constructing something? Is this new construction? Is this rehabilitation of something? Am I expanding a building, to address, additional vaccine administration? What does that look like? What is the impact of that? I think if you can justify these things, and that's where, we have to have some level of confidence, otherwise we are gonna be paralyzed to spend these dollars, and that is not the intent. The intent is not paralysis. The intent is action. But can you justify the action? And so we want to advise on the ability to how you justify the action. And I think there's creative ways to do that. And I feel like, at least with many of our clients, we need to go down that road. So
I think what's scary is you can take the feds out of Washington, but you can't take the Washington out of feds. And when they get out here and look at something, the bureaucracy and the regulatory, that's the safe harbor for any bureaucrat that comes out of Washington. And it has paralyzed. I've had conversations with our local officials to say, I got 2-3 years to deal with this. We'll wait till the last minute and see what else happens. If everybody takes that stance, which a lot are, ain't nothing gonna happen.
yeah, and we've had communities that we've met with. I mean, we've been driving around the state since the end of March, and we've had folks tell us that they don't like farmers, and we get it. But we believe that the money was allocated for a purpose. Yeah, there's bureaucrats everywhere, and there's gonna be, an issue with that. That's why I just kind of keep going back to, if you can, we can look at the regulations, we can look at, not what the FAQ says all the time, because that's confusing. But if we can look at the text and we can say, well, what is this telling us? How can we read into this? Can we, align, our recovery needs to that? Then you can't wait forever. And it is a concern. It's certainly a concern for me from just I take a consultant hat off and I'm just a resident. I'm like, money right here. We need to spend this money to be able to do some recovery stuff, right? I mean, there's a lot of flexibility in that. You can see it. And that's again, where we come back to, well, how can you justify it? I also am fully aware, because we've dealt with it for years, that right now, there's very little guidance about how to use the money, and there will be a new administration by the time we're spending this money, and there's gonna be retroactive guidance on that. They're gonna say, well, why didn't you do this whenever you got the money? And everyone's like, well, I didn't even see that was a requirement. That happens all the time. We just got to pivot. I don't know any other way to describe it at this point in time. It's such a unique program and such a unique opportunity that we all have to have the ability to pivot. And that's why right now, this sort of justification phase is truly critical, and identifying a list of needs is very important. And at least being transparent with that, like if it's a public meeting where they're discussed, it's really, that's very powerful for you. Because if they come back and they say, why did you do this? And then you're able to say, well, listen, we presented this, it was approved. I think there is less a chance for them to say, well, you pay us that money back than anything else. Because they're giving you that opportunity.
Another question, just out of pure personal curiosity. Where's the source of all these monies that the Fed's getting this money from?
Is that me, or is somebody else answering this question?
You have a printing press.
Yeah, there you go. There's a printing press.
There's one in Denver.
Do we have any other questions for Patrick? Do we have any on the Zoom? Nope. Okay, well, thank you so much, Dr. Greer and Patrick. Thank you so much. Taking the time and trying to explain some upcoming funding that can be really beneficial, but also confusing at the same time. Thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate it. For those of you that have come in person, please make sure to sign in. For those of you on Zoom, please also make sure to put your name and your organization in the chat, so we can make sure that we have you guys counted. And I'll go back to the Zoom. So we have some meetings that we're going to be planning in the upcoming. Ideally, staff, we'd like to plan some meetings that we are able to focus on some granting entities, hopefully bringing them in for maybe like a full day workshop to get some feedback. Our next roundtable meeting. Ideally, we'd like to start going out and doing some community showcasing visits and having you guys host where we provide the food, y'all host us, kind of show us around, and we learn some more about what our communities are doing. But thank you all so much for coming. Like Patrick mentioned, there's gonna be some money dropped through EDA. There's gonna be some funding opportunities. I think they said 5 soon. They keep pushing the deadline back. It was supposed to be Friday, but we're anxiously waiting. So we'll put some information together for all of you when they are ready to share that, to get that information out for you. If you have project ideas, reach out to us and we are here to support. So thank you all for coming. We really appreciate it and we will see you in a couple months.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's.
Like you're back in the classroom, huh?
Demographic.